Hello, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we are speaking with my friend, Chef Dina Altieri, Director of Culinary Enterprises at UMOM New Day Centers, a nonprofit organization in Arizona, which helps impoverished local communities and those in need of direction and guidance. Dina has spent over 30 years leading kitchens, and she has extensive experience as a chef educator and career coach, having trained countless aspiring culinarians for the workforce. She was named National Chef Educator of the Year in 2011 and also received the Cutting Edge Award in 2015 from the American Culinary Federation. Join us today as we chat with Dina about culinary education, mentorship, and her learnings after decades of serving others. Dina, welcome. Thank you so much for chatting with me this morning. It's so great to see you. How are you?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Normally I'm like one shade from being sunburnt out here in Phoenix.
So what? It's what, 8:42, probably 80 degrees, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Everybody is out in the neighborhood now, getting their, blowing their leaves and, sweeping their sidewalks and stuff, because in a couple hours it'll be prohibitively hot.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're raking. I thought leaves just disintegrate in the sun.
No, you got to blow them.
No, you got to blow them away.
Yep, you got to blow them out.
So I've got to say, I've known you for a long time. I think we met originally in LA when you were with Le Cordon Bleu. You worked at Necky on the East Coast. You worked at Kendall College in Chicago, and so much more. You've coached students in knowledge bowls and other competitions. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But the common denominator, and I'm going to make you blush, for the Dina I know, is giving back. You're always giving back. Press releases I see, articles I read, chatting with you. You've done some work with Escoffier, which is so appreciated. Giving back, it's touching. What is it? The obvious question, right? What is it about giving back through education in many ways that gives you so much joy, Dina? What motivates you about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that motivation is my own motivation too. Like there's a similarity in that, I'm a lifelong learner. I love the idea that, every day that I'm, doing a new project or coaching a new student or working with a new member of the staff, that they have the opportunity to grow. And so that's the motivator, right? Like every day we have the opportunity to be a little bit better than we were the day before. And there's nothing more in my career that's motivated me than people who just want to do a little bit more, want to be a little better. And that's probably what's motivated me to, coach the Knowledge Bowl team all those years. Is it's not about, winning the shiny trophy and the medallion, although that's awesome. And ACF does such a great job with creating that really comfortable, competitive, professional, arena. But at the end of the day, those students that come on that journey with me, like they start smart and they finish brilliant, and I'm to watch them do the work that they're doing in the industry, knowing that competition really was fodder for their success. So that's just been the motivator. Growth, and people being willing to change. Those are the big ones for me.
Yeah. I love the start smart, and I've followed the work that you've done with the American Culinary Federation. And for our listeners, it's the largest organization of professional chefs in the United States, right? Lots of education, lots of training, lots of networking. So this connection with culinarians, with students, if you will, Dina, it's a two-way street too, right? Are you learning from those that you're mentoring as well? Are there
absolutely.
good takeaways? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned in the intro, in 2011, being named the National Chef Educator of the Year was probably just one of the most important moments of my life. I can remember my mom and dad were in the crowd when I actually did my demo, my live demo in front of the chef panel. And I had that moment where obviously as a competitor, you're nervous, you're hoping this is your best run, and you've practiced it just so many times. And I had this moment up there where I realized that I'd kind of come into my own in the sense of like, I've done my best. And so it's going to be okay, like whatever happens, right? Because the competitors that were up against me that time, so good, each of those gentlemen were just phenomenal. So to have the opportunity to be in front of them as their peer competing is an honor. B, to be judged and critiqued and given feedback by chefs you admire is insanely important. And we tell students that all the time, like, it's okay if you're a B student, you still should go to the tutor, because the tutor can make you an A student. Like, you never stop wanting to move forward. But that, for me, I get a lot out of being a teacher. And as you mentioned, you and I have known each other pretty much for the duration of me being in education. And I came to it when it was the Southern California School of Culinary Arts in 1997. And just got hooked, like somebody believed in me and thought that I had something important to share. And I never got up in front of the room like I'm the expert. I kind of got up in front of the room as, I'm learning with you. I happen to know a little bit more about these few things, so let's go on this journey together. And that's kind of just been my mantra. It's nice to be an expert in some stuff, but I mean, are any of us really experts in a industry that's constantly evolving? So that's been my motivation, learning as much as I can as I go. And the students have been, without them, I wouldn't be, learning as much as I have.
No, I love that. I love that response. I mean, they all say that while you're learning, you're the best teacher you can possibly be, right? So,
Absolutely.
So we'll back up again just a second there. Obviously, you educated yourself first. You went into the industry. What was it that triggered that desire within you to go all in the education route, right? While still honing your craft, right? Because to your point, the industry's changing, trends are changing, food changes. Plant-based is all the buzz today, right? So we're right. Educating ourselves again. But what was it that was so attractive to you on the education side that sort of pulled you away from the stoves, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's the academic elements of it. It's at the time I was executive chef of a really great catering company in Los Angeles, right on the Miracle Mile, doing mostly on-premise wedding catering for a company called More Than a Mouthful, with a couple of awesome CIA graduates that were, interested in hiring a chef that was also a CIA grad. I'm a grad from 1991. And so, being in that arena and obviously cooking and managing and creating menus and working with clients and creating these massive events was fantastic. But what I started to realize is that there was almost kind of like something missing, like, man, it'd be cool to like do something that was more academic. And so I met Chef Robert Danhai in culinary school, basically. And so he and I both kind of ended up in the South Bay. I was living in Redondo Beach at the time, and he was at the culinary school, and he's the one who tapped me and said, I need a teacher to teach like Tuesday nights. It's a class called Hot Foods Production. And I was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And so what I realized is that I still have I'm sure this doesn't surprise you, Chef, but I still have like my original lesson plans where I was like drawing like the primals of lamb, because I had to get up in front of the room. And again, assume that, everyone's looking at me. I got to know what I'm talking about. And all those lessons were handwritten at the time. And just, again, what that, to use your word, what that sparked in me or triggered in me was like, wait a minute, I can cook. I can help people be better. That was your first question. Why do you do this? And then third, oh my gosh, I can totally geek out on this, and I'm looking through Larousse Gastronomique and I'm pulling stuff from Harold McGee. And like, for me, it was like the perfect match to my skill set and my desire to be better myself. So every lesson got better. Every time I did the demo, it got better, faster, tighter, cleaner. It was just, there was always a challenge to it. I mean, I must have, you can relate to this as an educator. It's like, how many times have you shown somebody how to make a beurre blanc or how to do, a basic, 8-cut chicken or chicken supreme? It's like every time I did it, like it never got old. Like that's how I knew I was in the right place, is like, let me show you how to go get the wishbone. Like I would get excited about it. And students would always be like, Chef, you're so fired up. And I'm like, yeah, and I've been doing this for 22 years. And it's like my first julienne. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm excited to talk about it. So yeah, it's just, that's how I know I'm in the right place. It's just never gotten old for me.
It's your passion. It's your passion. Like my kids say, it's your jam, right? Pun intended. I love that. While you were speaking there, I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, there's so many crossroads, right? So speaking of crossroads, great LA restaurant of our friend Tal Ronan. But you mentioned Robert. He'll be our guest next week.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh yeah, he's an amazing person. The networking is insane, right?
Yes.
When we chatted last, we were talking about what are the common denominators with chefs? You love music, you love motorcycles, or you love both, right? And we were laughing because I think I was at my son's baseball game, and then all of a sudden we start talking about your softball career.
Totally.
I mean, for me, this whole chef world, and we'll come back to the ACF again in a minute, is this world of networking, right? Friends that I don't remember when I met Robert, for example, right? Years ago, probably at an ACF conference. He was probably doing a demo on Southeast Asian cuisine.
Right.
And it's like you rush up to the front like, hey, I need to know you. I need to know you. And I love that. Hey, remind our listeners about your softball career.
Oh my gosh.
I got to go there. I got to go there.
It's so funny. Yeah.
What position?
Second base, and shortstop. Yeah,
action,
I was definitely an infielder.
Yes.
My father, when I was a kid, taught me how to take a hop, off the edge of the edge of the dirt and the grass. And so, yeah, I grew up playing softball, and that's actually a really great kind of quick story. Is that I remember I think my mom would tell it. I was 7. And I was, let's not call it shy. I don't think I was shy, but I was.
That would be hard to believe.
Very hard to believe. Very hard to believe. But I didn't want to join a team. Like I was nervous, right? Probably fear of failure, right? Like,
sure.
I know how to play. I know how to catch. I know how to play with my big brother. I know how to play with the kids in the neighborhood. My dad says I'm good, whatever. But my parents were like, no, you have to go try out for the team. And so again, through the encouragement of a mentor, call them parents at the time, I tried out for the little league. The first team I was on was the Pelicans. It was awesome.
Nice.
And so yeah. So from T-ball all the way through high school, I played pretty competitively. I played on like a summer league, girls fast pitch, and just that's where my friends were, right, Chef? I mean, like your friends are on the ball field. You grow up with them, and
so good.
Just loved every bit of it. Really, it helped me grow. It helped me learn how to perform on a team. I was pretty humbled at certain layers of my playing, in the sense that sometimes I wasn't good enough to be a starter. If it was like that all-star team on the summer league, I made the team at 13 years old, but I wasn't good enough to be a starting shortstop or second baseman. And I remember the coaches talking to us, my family, and saying, what do you think? And my dad still kind of tells this story because I was totally cool with it. I wasn't like, well, I don't want to be on the team if I can't play. My first thought there was, wow, I get to learn, I get to learn from these other players that have been doing it a lot longer than me.
And be with your friends and stay with your friends. Yeah.
It's probably one of the first stories of that I can remember of being like in that lifelong learning process and not really having a ton of expectation other than maybe I'll learn something cool. And then soon enough, when I'm good enough, I'll be able to play. I took that mentality with me into the kitchen, because that's very similar, right? You want to be the sous chef. You think you're good enough. You kind of got something to prove a little bit. You need to put some time in and sharpen your knives and put your head down and get to it. And someone will notice you, and if they don't, maybe that's not the right kitchen. So I just feel like that story, that mentality has stayed with me for forever.
I love that. I mean, just a beautiful analogy, right? And it did stay with you. So, high five to Dad for keeping you focused. So did he let you be? Did he allow you to be on the All-Stars even though you weren't starting? right
Oh
off the bat?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there you go. Way
Oh
to go.
yeah. Yeah. It was a summer team called the Bethel Rebels. We were from Bethel, Connecticut.
Nice, nice.
And we traveled all over the region. And yeah, like I said, I think my parents looked to me and said, okay, Dina, this is what the coaches are saying. Are you cool with that? And I was totally cool with that. The opportunity to learn from those older players meant everything to me. And I wasn't a starting player, but I never once like had any kind of negative feeling about that. And
That's
then the
great.
next
That's great.
year I was a starter, and the years after that. Yeah.
You're the starter, right? Yeah. And the
Yeah.
million dollar contract and, all of that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to come back to, these common denominators. So are you riding a Harley now? Is that right?
No, no, I
No.
ride a Yamaha Virago 750.
Oh, so small
Um,
machine, right?
yeah, so I
I,
did learn on a little Harley Sportster
okay.
883.
Okay.
And it's so funny that you mentioned Chef Dan Heist coming on next week, because he rides a
Yeah. Yeah.
motorcycle.
Of course.
And this is the story I used to tell my students at Kendall College is I had like this, and it is what it is, but I called it like my midlife crisis, right? I said, oh my God, I had a midlife crisis when I was in my early 40s, and I decided that I needed to buy two things that used both my arms and my legs and required coordination and were quite noisy.
Yeah.
And they both were Yamahas. One was a Yamaha Stage Custom drum kit,
Oh, nice. Nice.
right?
And the
And
other
one
had two wheels.
and the
Okay.
other was a motorcycle. Yeah. And so it was kind of cool to be, again, talking to the students about you never stop learning. And I was really bad on the drums for a while, and probably you'd still consider me mediocre at best. And, and then I still ride the motorcycle. So, to learn something new was totally cool. And the students used to razz me because I used to go to drum lessons like a couple nights a week, and I'd have to like quickly leave class on those nights to go make it to my drum lesson. And the students would just razz me about that. I'm like, what? I go to class and the drum teacher gives me homework, and if I don't do it, he yells at me. And yeah,
It's a great lesson too. Our students have lives too. And I've always appreciated that, right? It's like, just like we
absolutely.
have to rush off, they have to rush off. I've got a BMW 650 GS. It's a little bit more enduro. I'm at a point in my life where I'm going to stay off the highway out of
Yeah.
respect for all the other drivers. But I love how many chefs love, the music and the need for speed is what we're going to call it. Hey, so let's jump a little bit into the American Culinary Federation. It's just been such a big part of your life.
It really has. Yeah.
Yeah. And so just a few years ago, you received the Cutting Edge Award. Can you talk a little bit about that? What does the accolade mean in the industry? What does it mean to you? And then we'll
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about the ACF.
Yeah, I mean, those, and again, I think I touched on it earlier, at least through my lens, we never jump into the competition arena or the coaching arena or the professional, credentialing arena with anything other than the mindset of trying to be better, right? So when you're given an award like the Cutting Edge Award, you're like, wow, I'm being acknowledged for maybe just doing things that are a little bit different. And I think at that time, it was likely due to the influence that I had those years coaching Knowledge Bowl. I just got such a charge at a Knowledge Bowl, every bit of it. Like it was so hard for me to sit in that audience and not scream and shout and cheer. And every once in a while, they'd shush me, because I would just be so fired up that like, oh my God, my students just hit the buzzer like after 2 words were spoken by the MC, like a couple of keyword clues.
They just
and
knew
bam,
it. They just
they
knew
it.
Yeah.
And how are you not proud of that, to the point where, but again, that room, you kind of had to keep it quiet because it was a little bit more of like a quiz bowl kind of competition. But yeah, I think that Cutting Edge Award was largely due to my, just the years spent coaching the teams and being, I hope, a role model to other coaches, just to be professional And again, it's so competitive, and no one wants to lose. But at the end of the day, like, is anybody really losing? Like, we're all here just learning a ton and showing our students what it means to be kind of, again, competitive for the right reasons, and taking people to the next level. I think also worthy of mention with the American Culinary Federation is I've been a voice there in the equity, diversity, and inclusion conversation. How do we make kitchens a bit more equitable? How do we give voices to, people who are maybe females in the industry who maybe have felt like they haven't been given an opportunity, or, anyone and everyone, when you think about just marginalized communities in our industry, and who's kind of given the chance and who isn't. I've been a voice in that arena, and I'm super excited about that ACF is always kind of reaching out with me like, hey, Dina, do you want to be a part of this? And I don't say no, because I really feel like it's important for me to create an environment that's better for everybody who's coming up after me. And I've been with the ACF for, it's 25 years this year.
I love it. I love it. And there are a lot of acronyms behind your name. And which one? So becoming a culinary educator through the criteria of the ACF wasn't one of my original questions, but you just reminded me. What did that mean to you? I participate a lot with the ACF, so I review many of the applications that come in, right, and watch the videos. And boy, it's unbelievably rewarding for me to see culinarians who step outside of the kitchen, right, and want to become culinary educators. Talk about that feeling just a little bit.
Yeah. And I think, what I'll use to sort of frame my answer, Chef, is that I think the ACF does a really great job of creating that sort of those stepping stones of credentialing and certification for culinarians, from the newest, CFC credential that they'll give to a high school grad or someone who's maybe not on the college pathway. That to me is huge, because what we're doing, right? Yeah. What we're doing is we're increasing access to our industry through certification and credentialing. That might be a non-traditional pathway. So first and foremost, I back certification, because I think that there's a clear pathway for so many different people. So whether you're a cook, a pastry cook, or, to your question, an educator, you have an avenue where you can exercise your skill set and be rewarded or badged or credentialed for that skill set. So yeah, I have two educator credentials. One, is the CEC from ACF. And it means a lot to me, because in order to be an educator, you have to be a great chef. And you also have to be somebody who, the biggest part of your job as an educator is to model great professional behavior, in the sense of like you're mentoring. So it is one thing, we've all known chefs, they stand in front of a cutting board and they're super good at what they're doing. Maybe they're showing some fabrication, maybe they're showing some plating, whatever it is at the demo it is. And then there's people who do that really well. And then there's like the educator who gets that like other piece of it that isn't so much just the hard skill of fabrication, but the soft skills of, okay, now how do we teach our students resilience and grit and hustle and perseverance and not fearing failure, and like all that other stuff that is critical to a more long-term success in the industry. I think that's what I'm after.
Yeah, I love that response. And what I was thinking about as I listened was the really, really great educators who somehow, some way, some are so brilliant at weaving a needs analysis into the conversation. In other words, let's start with what you know or what you're familiar with. Right. And then all of a sudden you can see the student become somewhat relaxed and familiar, right? Oh, I can have this conversation. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So much of what you're speaking of, I can't help but be reminded of our namesake, Auguste Escoffier, right? Who 100 years ago was speaking of pathways and modeling great behavior, to use your words. and providing access to the industry in a very, very respectful way.
Yeah.
Imagine that 100 years ago,
Oh
right?
yeah. And for him, I mean, just the fact that somebody had the brain, and the emotional intelligence to codify all of those things, knowing that
Oh,
it would make
yes.
it easier for all of us. So like when we say sauce chasseur, we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah,
That to
yeah.
me, that like sort of standardization piece is really cool.
I love it.
And that's the only reason why we can communicate really kind of
Yeah.
globally about food is
the
part
the
of
la-
that.
the language of the kitchen, which I
Absolutely.
adore.
Yep.
So let's get passionate and maybe even emotional. You do some amazing work in your local area there, um, and I'd love for you to just share what your mission is, what your organization, what UMOM's mission is in terms of creating opportunities for perhaps some less fortunate folks and perhaps people who have come upon difficult times or challenges in their life. And I
Yeah.
know it's really meaningful work for you. So share a little bit of that with our listeners.
Sure. Yeah. So right now I'm working for a nonprofit. It's called UMOM. And what we do is we essentially serve the homeless in our community. And, everyone's driven down the street and seen a family or an individual who's experiencing homelessness. And you kind of have that feeling where you're just, many of us are like, man, I don't know what I can do about that. Well, I'm lucky because I get to do something about it. Every day that I'm at work, my team and I have the opportunity to feed several hundred individuals that are experiencing homelessness that live in a residential homeless shelter with us. And so we're feeding kids, their moms and dads, and single women that are experiencing homelessness in Maricopa County. So technically the shelters are in Phoenix. And I'm the director there. I run a food service operation that has kind of three buckets. One is a residential dining facility where we, as I mentioned, we feed every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 365 days a year. We're feeding the residents there so that we can nourish them and, rebuild them and restore their hope through food, which is, again, such an honor. We also operate a little social enterprise, which is called Helpings Cafe. It's right on Van Buren Street, basically at 33rd and Van Buren. And that's what we call a social enterprise. So it runs as a small business connected to our nonprofit. And we do catering and cafe service there. So it's open to the public. And then the third bucket is in that cafe and in that residential dining kitchen, we run a little food service training program. So that's the education piece. So we have, a couple instructor partners and a chef instructor who manages the program alongside me, and we run it. It's called Homegrown, and it's the coolest thing ever because what it is, it's a free program. It's 6 weeks, so it's like a little mini boot camp for clients that are experiencing homelessness within our UMOM programs to come and learn from us. And so how cool is that, right, Chef? Like we have a little cafe and catering operation, and our clients, our folks that we serve are now in there with us cooking and making coffee because we have a whole barista program there as well. So basically what happens is once we do the soft skills training and the hard skills training and all the job readiness stuff, we get these individuals jobs. And so the mission obviously of our agency is to break the cycle of homelessness, but our team in food service gets to utilize the skills that we have in food and beverage to actually deliver education to clients that want to learn from us in that space.
I just love it. It's and I can hear the passion in your voice. So for some of your clients, obviously the goal is kind of, it feels like an end-to-end solution, right? You get them trained, skilled up, if you will, and then you help them with the job piece. Do some of your clients find a journey or a pathway to more education or to the ACF perhaps, or
So
otherwise? Yeah.
that's like the dream, right? Is that you
Okay.
ignite some passion in someone and they decide that they want to go back to school or they want to. So I'll answer it this way. We do have some individuals that come through our homegrown training program that are teenagers, and pretty much about 90% of them, I can convince them to go back and complete their high school education and get their GED, which then obviously, leads them into a much better avenue. Secondly, because our cafe is a Starbucks store, we have a dotted line to Starbucks employment for the graduates of our program.
Wow.
And what Starbucks does that's really cool is they have a really robust tuition reimbursement program. And so potentially a graduate from our program who gets employed with Starbucks can then get a full ride for a bachelor degree through ASU online. So that's a big deal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah.
And then the other way that I would answer that is kind of a shout out to a really great agency in Chicago that I was working at before relocating here to Phoenix. And that agency is called the Center on Halsted. And it is an agency that serves the LGBTQ community. And one thing that I'm very, very proud of before, packing up the car and moving west was we were able to pilot that ACF CFC certification there. So I had students that were in a 9-week program with our program there at Center on Halsted. That one was called Silver Fork. And the students that graduated from Silver Fork at 9 weeks were eligible to test for that CFC credential. And I had 3 of them go through the coaching with me and the pilot, and they all sailed through that credentialing and got their certs. So they were the first, candidates who were completers of a CFC credential from the ACF that were non-high school pathway folks. They were coming out of a community-based culinary program run by a nonprofit. So we kind of made a little history in that moment. And there was not a dry eye in the room when those guys passed. Yeah. It was so cool.
I love it. I love it. Yeah.
It was so cool. So, 3 individuals that, were not heading for college and were likely without a mentor, maybe not even going to find food service. So they were able to not only complete our program, but emerge with that CFC credential from ACF.
I love it. Amazing story, right? And on behalf of all of us in the industry, thank you for that work. It's super meaningful, and I know it means a lot to you to give back in that way. You mentioned Chicago. I got to go back to Chicago, born and raised, and so you've done the food scene in LA. You've done the food scene on the East Coast, right? Very different. Any thoughts? Now you've been out of Chicago for 3 years now, maybe 4.
It'll be 4 years. Yeah.
Wow, that goes fast.
4 years. It does.
What do you think about the food scene in Chicago? It's a lot different than it was 20 years ago, right?
It's a lot different, but boy, it is the one thing that my spouse and I talk about all the time that we miss the most. Obviously the pulse of Chicago, it's such a cool city. I mean, I was born in the Bronx and moved out of New York City when I was just a kid, but so I don't have lived experience living in New York as an adult. So being in Chicago was like the coolest thing, the trains and the buses and the hustle and the bustle, and even just a great food town. It will come back strong for sure.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, no doubt. I feel the same way. Speaking of which, but what are your thoughts on the future of the industry? Kind of tie the diversity piece into that, and the benefits, and just the excitement that awaits the next generation that's heading that way.
Yeah. I mean, there's everybody's talking about, what next. And I think for me, the big thing that resonates is making better kitchens for that next generation, or the generation right now that really does, want to continue working in kitchens, because we all just love it so much. And we love that we can kind of be ourselves and the kitchen is home to so many different personalities and such a diverse group of people that what a shame that we're struggling the way we are right now, but I know we're going to rebound. And I think one of the keys that I'm focusing on right now with my community here is I think every employer needs to learn how to become like a second chance employer, right? Like we all need to understand the empathy and the compassion that is required of us as managers in order to cultivate a really healthy kitchen team. And, when I look at the pictures of you behind you, chef, you got some good ones there on the wall. I mean, let's face it, right? We can't really move forward if we continue to create, kitchen spaces, front of house spaces that are so volatile and kind of angry and almost like competitive in a way that's just not really great for people. So dare I say, maybe soften it a little bit, try to be a little bit more empathetic as managers, try to create, set schedules for your employees, pay them well. There's just a lot we can do to kind of move it forward so people want to be a part of the kitchen environment again, right? It's not doom and gloom. I think it's just a cool opportunity for us to reset and refocus and do what we can to make it better than the kitchens that we came up in.
And it's been exciting to watch the reset. And I go back to Escoffier again. It's the way he envisioned it many, many moons ago. Treat your people well, and the rest falls into place. So we're running out of time a little bit. I will ask you to come back again at another time because there's so much that we didn't even get to yet, right?
Thank you, Chef.
But I'm so proud of you and so happy for the unbelievable success and the work that you're doing in Arizona. So it's the time of our podcast where I ask you, Dina, what is the ultimate dish? In your opinion.
I love it. Yeah. The ultimate dish, I mean, I guess for me, the big, the big answer would be anything that I'm sharing with my family, especially something that has like a resounding, like food flavor memory for me. Like I wish I could go back and sit at the table in my grandmother's house in Jersey and like eat her stuffed artichokes again.
Oh,
Like that would just be really a significant experience for me. I still love it when I visit my mom and dad, and mom's making like eggplant parmesan. Like that to me, because it conjures up a food memory that is so powerful that now is the eggplant parm awesome? It's delicious, right?
Be careful.
So, right? It's delicious.
Of course it is.
But it's like,
it's the memory.
It's the memory of it. It's that it means so much. I can remember we were a team from Necky. We were traveling down to cook at the James Beard House years ago, and we actually had lunch at Le Bernardin. And that's one of the fancy ultimate dish answers I can give you. We had and it's funny. I don't normally navigate to remembering the dessert course. But this one was unforgettable. This one was a goat milk panna cotta with a little passion fruit gelée on the top of it.
Yeah.
And there was just something about like that tart sweet balance and the juxtaposed textures of that dish that made it probably one of the most memorable. But for me, ultimate dishes are the ones that conjure up really powerful flavor memories, and often make me almost a little sad, right? Like a little bittersweet, like wish grandma were here to enjoy this with us again or whatever. But food is so powerful. And I think that's why it's stayed with me for all these years in my career, because it gives me so much more than just, wow, that's a delicious, whatever, fill in the blank, taco or pozole or, again, eggplant parm. But it's food it's just got, it has magical powers.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And a brilliant response. My favorite line was, food is powerful. It absolutely is. With that, Chef Dina, my friend, thank you so much for being with us. I will ask you back.
Thank you, Chef.
I want to talk James Beard next time. I want to talk Le Bernardin. I've been there and experience the same kind of feelings. That level of cuisine it's I'm feeling you. I'm feeling you right there.
It was like we were moved, and I think, obviously, the experiences you've had, Chef, you just been to restaurants that have just been like, you're at the table and you're just like, wow, like what is happening? It's so delicious. Like, Dan Barber's food and obviously Chef Thomas Keller. And there's just what they're able to do with food it's high cuisine, it's at that level. But for me, the most magical meals have been the ones that have been, I'm not going to say basic in a negative way. I'm just going to say the stuff is seasonal. The stuff is appropriate to the moment. And it's my family around me. And we're talking about the loved ones that aren't with us anymore as we enjoy this traditional thing. And food has that power. It really does. Food is love, and it always will be to me. And so, I'm right where I need to be.
And and I'm so glad that you're there. And everyone you mentioned, Thomas Keller, Eric Repair, Dan Barber, all mentors, all giving back.
Absolutely.
In the best ways that they can.
Yeah. We had the opportunity here to dabble a little bit with World Central Kitchen with Chef Andres. He has a little outpost here in Phoenix called Frontline Foods. And they approached me and we leveraged a local really great taco restaurant called Tacos Chihuas, and they did a donation for us, and we had Frontline Foods there, and we came together. And when somebody's like, "Oh, Frontline Foods is a part of World Central Kitchen," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like I'm a part of the Jose Andres movement. How cool is that? So like you mentioned, network is critical, and I think as long as we're in the right place, doing the right thing, and doing what we love, and sharing our knowledge with others, and again, like you mentioned, for me, I have the opportunity to help somebody break the cycle of homelessness for themselves and their children. There's been no greater gift than that for me in my career.
So well said, Dina. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And
thank you, Chef.
I'll be really excited to bring you back again.
Awesome. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.